It is 1 a.m. in Washington, 5 in London, and 2 on a Thursday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Conn-young. Here are the top stories making headlines at this hour. President Park Geun-hye presides over a meeting with government officials and business representatives on national television to draw up measures for drastic regulatory reforms. The U.S. Fed is on track to reduce its monthly bond purchases and could raise interest rate as soon as next spring. Global stocks retreat on the new Fed chief's comments. And a new development in the case of the missing Malaysia Airlines plane. Australia has found objects in the Indian Ocean possibly related to the search for Flight 370. And doctors in Korea vote to accept an agreement with the government over contentious medical policies, putting on hold their plan to stage a nationwide strike. We'll have those stories and more, but first, let us begin right here in Korea at the nation's top office. Now, as she entered her second year in office, President Park Geun-hye has at times used quite strong words to express her intention to implement major regulatory reforms. And on this Thursday, she is presiding over a 4-hour televised debate on deregulation with government officials and some 60 representatives from the private sector in attendance. Let's now go live to our presidential office correspondent Choi You-sun for details on today's debate, which began, I believe, just minutes ago. You-sun.
Conn-young, during the first session, President Park will highlight the need for sweeping reforms of regulations, which she says hinder economic activity and job creation. In her 3-year economic innovation plan, which she laid out during her New Year's address, the president had vowed to streamline red tape to spur economic growth. This is the first time the president herself is presiding over the ministerial meeting, and the first time it's being broadcast live. The meeting, previously scheduled for Monday, was postponed because the president wanted more participation from the private sector and to hear how the regulations are actually affecting the businesses. More than 150 people, including some 60 businessmen, are taking part in today's debate. And what's also worth noting is that people representing not only conglomerates but also small and mid-sized firms, as well as the self-employed, are taking the microphone.
So You-sun, it definitely seems like today's meeting will be more than an actual debate where, participants can really say what's on their minds and toss their ideas around, I believe, with no time limit.
That's right. 4 hours have been set aside for today's debate, but many expect it could go past 6 p.m. Korea time. After listening to the private sector's concerns and questions, ministers will explain the goals and details of the government's deregulation initiatives. In session 2, the debate will focus on case studies on how past administrations had failed to achieve the reforms. There will also be discussions on ways to bring about an effective regulatory reform, particularly in Korea's 5 major service industries, namely health and medicine, education, tourism, finance, and software. Conn-young?
All right, You-sun, thank you for that, and do keep us updated throughout the day. That was our presidential office correspondent Choi You-sun on President Park's push for regulatory reforms and a debate on deregulation that is currently taking place at the nation's top office. Meanwhile, Korean doctors have called off a nationwide strike plan for next week. The Korean Medical Association said it will accept a tentative agreement reached with the government on contentious medical policies after a vote held earlier this morning, or at noon Korea time, that is about 2 hours ago. Now, among the 41,000 members that have participated in the vote, the KMA said over 62% have voted for accepting the deal. Now, it includes a plan to carry out a trial run of a controversial telemedicine system and allow hospitals to build for-profit subsidiaries, along with other revisions to medical policy. Now, the planned 6-day strike was to start next Monday and followed a 1-day doctor strike earlier this month. And this latest development from the missing Malaysian Airlines plane, Australia's Prime Minister says that new and credible information has come to light about the missing Malaysia Airlines nearly 2 weeks after it disappeared. Prime Minister Tony Abbott told Parliament Thursday that 2 objects that could be related to the missing plane have been spotted on satellite imagery, adding that he has informed Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak. Now, he added that an Australian Air Force aircraft was dispatched to the area to try to locate the objects, with 3 more surveillance planes to follow. He has not disclosed the exact location of the objects to the press and has cautioned against drawing any premature conclusions about this latest development. Meanwhile, there is rising speculation the leaders of Korea, the United States, and Japan will meet on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague next week. Now, if this trilateral summit does take place, it will be the first time President Park Geun-hye will meet with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe since both of them took office. Our Hwang Sung-hee reports.
It's looking increasingly likely that President Park Geun-hye will meet with their Japanese counterpart in what will be the first official meeting between the two since she took office last year. The meeting would take place as part of a trilateral summit with the United States on the sidelines of next week's Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague. President Park has thus far refused to sit down with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, criticizing him for his distorted perception of history. But Abe's recent stream of conciliatory gestures has put the ball in President Park's court. Last week, the Japanese leader stated his administration will uphold a landmark apology issued to the victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement. Just days later, Abe called South Korea Japan's most important neighboring country and expressed his hope that the two could build a future-oriented relationship at the upcoming meeting in the Netherlands. The Japanese government has also reportedly postponed announcing the results of its annual textbook screening to early April from March 26th. The event usually angers South Korea, which argues Japan is trying to cover up its wartime crimes and making unjustified territorial claims over the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island. Sources in Seoul say that Tokyo's actions may not be enough for a bilateral summit, but that the two could meet in the presence of the U.S. The presidential office of Cheongwade is reportedly reviewing whether to say yes to the trilateral summit next week. If the talks do take place, the 3 leaders will likely discuss North Korea's nuclear program and regional issues of mutual interest. As willing as the 2 neighbors may be to patch up their differences, they're also under pressure from Washington, who wants its 2 main allies in Northeast Asia to mend ties before President Barack Obama visits the region next month. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
Now, moving over to Crimea, the Ukrainian government is making preparations to evacuate its troops from Crimea after more Ukrainian bases were taken over by Russian forces late Wednesday. Western leaders say they will slap even more sanctions on Moscow if Russian forces encroach further into eastern Ukraine. Shin Se-min reports.
The head of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council told reporters in Kiev Wednesday that Ukraine was planning to relocate 25,000 service personnel and families from the region, effectively surrendering the disputed territory. His comments came after pro-Russian forces stormed 2 naval bases in Crimea on Wednesday night and raised a Russian flag. These were just the latest in a series of takeovers by Russian troops and local self-defense forces using a mixture of attrition and threats. The attacks on the bases in Crimea came as the United States and Europe sought ways to increase pressure on defiant Russia. Speaking from the former Soviet Republic of Lithuania Wednesday, U.S. Vice President Joe Biden declared that the U.S. was absolutely committed to defending its allies.
I want to make it clear. We stand resolutely with our Baltic allies in support of the Ukrainian people and against Russian aggression. As long as Russia continues on this dark path, they will face increasing political and economic isolation.
The Obama administration and its allies said Wednesday that they're working to devise new and tougher economic penalties to stop Russian President Vladimir Putin from moving forces further into Ukraine's eastern territory. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon will also meet Putin in Moscow on Thursday to seek a way out of the conflict. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Now shifting our focus to North Korea. North Korea will hold the first session of its new legislature next month, the first since North Korean leader Kim Jong-un assumed power back in 2011. The North state-run Korean Central News Agency reported Thursday that the inaugural session of the 13th Supreme People's Assembly is slated for April 9th in Pyongyang. Now, they are expected to discuss matters related to helping Kim consolidate his power base after the recent purge of close aides, including Chang Song-taek, once the second most powerful man in the secluded state. Now, earlier this month, 687 new deputies were elected to the North's rubber-stamp legislature, including leader Kim Jong-un himself, who was elected unanimously.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Conn-young live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market for the dual use of the Korean name East Sea and Japanese name Sea of Japan in school textbooks in the state of Virginia. The new U.S. Federal Reserve Chief Janet Yellen held her first presser earlier today, and it has kept the policy set by her predecessor Ben Bernanke on track by slashing another $10 billion from the Fed's monthly bond buying program. Now, she has also hinted at a rate increase which could come as soon as spring of next year. ARIRANG's Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
U.S. Federal Reserve officials have made another $10 billion reduction in their bond buying stimulus program as widely expected. After her first monetary policy meeting as Fed Chair, Janet Yellen said Wednesday that the economy is strong enough to support continued improvement in the labor market. The program was at $85 billion a month in December, and the fresh cut will take it to $55 billion. While Yellen said that the central bank expects to keep interest rates near zero for a considerable time after the bond buying program ends this fall, she hinted that it could start raising rates next spring.
The language that we use in this statement is considerable period. This is the kind of term it's hard to define, but, probably means something on the order of around 6 months or that type of thing.
The Fed tried, however, to set the market at ease, saying it would look at a wide range of economic indicators to make a judgment on the economy's readiness for higher rates. It also said that it would no longer link its future decision to increase rates to the unemployment rate, as the jobless rate has fallen faster than expected. Despite the assurance, financial markets reacted swiftly to her comments, with U.S. stocks and government bonds falling. Market analysts say that the Fed's fresh forecasts show a shift to a more hawkish policy stance than what they had been seeing just a few months ago. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Let's now get more insight on how Wall Street responded to this rather surprising comments from U.S. Fed Chair Janet Yellen's press conference. We have Angela Moon, senior correspondent at Thomson Reuters in New York, connecting with us live to give us an exclusive look on how Wall Street took the news. Angela, you must have first-hand experience, if you will, on market reaction to the presser from Janet Yellen. Now, we know that the market sold off on this initially, but do tell us in detail how the atmosphere was, how the traders and investors took the news.
Well, good afternoon there, Conn-young. I have to say, today's presser was one of the most unexpected events from the U.S. Federal Reserve. The statement from the central bank's latest policy meeting was in line with market expectations, but the real surprise came from Janet Yellen's presser, which was aired about half an hour after the release of the statement. Yellen says that the central bank could start to raise interest rates around 6 months after its current asset purchase program ends. She said that the bond purchases would probably end in the fall, which means a rate reduction 6 months later would move up the timetable for the Fed's first hike, which many market participants had been expecting in the second half of 2015.
Now, Angela, that does seem like something that would take the market by surprise. What are analysts saying on Wall Street?
Well, several analysts are wondering whether her answer was an unintended slip, if you will, given the deliberately vague language of the Fed's statement. But whether it is or it isn't, the reaction in financial markets was swift and sharp as prices for U.S. stocks and government bonds added to earlier losses triggered by fresh Fed forecast that shows policymakers are inclined to raise rates a bit more aggressively than they had been just a few months ago. Most top Wall Street economists, however, continued to see the first rate hike in the second half of 2006, according to a Reuters poll. So it's definitely a mixed picture, a divided picture out there.
Now, Angela, going back a step, I realize this was Janet Yellen's first press briefing as the chair of the Federal Reserve, and I think she more or less showed the world that, the Federal Reserve run by her would be a little bit different from her predecessor, Ben Bernanke. How did the investment community evaluate her first presser?
You're absolutely right. This marked the first press conference for Janet Yellen, who is really the first female chair of the Federal Reserve. The Fed holds these press conferences regularly to let the public know that the central bank is delivering on its two major tasks, which are, number one, lowering their unemployment rates so that nearly all Americans have jobs, and number two, controlling inflation to make sure you're basically not paying too much at the supermarket. It was historic enough to see a woman deliver the official diagnosis of the U.S. economy. Yet Yellen's first policy statement was historic for another major reason, which is that she shows that she's running a very different kind of Federal Reserve than the one Ben Bernanke ran before. Unlike Bernanke, who often catered to Wall Street's fears, this new Federal Reserve appears to be reluctant to play the, quote, the usual game. It was clear that under her rules, the Fed is stepping away from its reputation as a bunch of economists eager to please the crowd on trading floors. The best example came when Yellen wiped away one lazy way of measuring the economy's health. The Fed under Bernanke promised that when the unemployment rate hit 6.5%, the central bank would raise interest rates. This was called quantitative guidance, and it fed Wall Street's fetish for largely made-up numbers. But Yellen basically shut down the argument, saying that the Fed will take into account a wide range of information, including measures of labor market conditions, indicators of inflation pressures, and inflation expectations, as well as readings on financial developments, sort of giving a new definition to what qualifies as, quote, quantitative guidance.
So basically, no more slack-offs, all right? Angela Moon, senior Wall Street correspondent, Thomson Reuters, New York. Thank you, Angela, for joining us to deliver us the very latest on Wall Street. And now it's time for our arts and culture segment with our Im Yoon-hee. And I hear that she has a very special museum for us today, exhibiting some very rare Korean artifacts. So let's join her. Hello there, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. Now, I'm sure some of you have seen the building of this museum, as it's been under construction for the past 7 years, and it's located in a very busy part of Seoul. But yes, this museum is to celebrate the opening, is housing some of Korea's most prized national treasures. And so to see these, people have been waiting in line to see some of these before, and so let's take a look.
It's an architectural masterpiece in itself. Dongdaemun Design Plaza is finally opening. After 7 years of planning, construction, and overcoming obstacles, this one-of-a-kind building now stands as a symbol of the ever-unique culture of Seoul and the Dongdaemun area itself. To mark the grand opening, a series of arts and cultural events will take place at the center, including a rare exhibition of some of Korea's historical treasures. The Conn-young Art and Culture Foundation will be displaying its collection outside of its gallery space in Seongbuk-dong for the first time ever. The museum only displays the works a few times a year, and people usually line up and wait for hours just to get a glimpse. The collection includes some of Korea's most prized traditional works, and now they've been made more accessible.
We've made it easier for Korean people to get closer to our nation's beautiful cultural properties. Using this large modern building, we are showing Korea's rich history.
It's the combination of the past, present, and future that makes this event so special for Korean culture. The cutting-edge technology installed at Dongdaemun Design Plaza contrasts with the age-old, priceless historical treasures housed inside, showing Seoul's ability to advance while paying tribute to its past.
These artifacts have been carefully collected by Conn-young and the other museum founders in order to preserve our fundamental spirit and purpose. And if people don't know what they are exactly, these artifacts can teach them that valuable lesson.
The museum, the exterior of the museum is quite extraordinary, I see. Now, I heard there is a story behind this Conn-young Art Museum and how it came to be, so tell us about that.
Exactly. So the Conn-young Art Museum, which is donating, or not donating, but the owners of these artifacts. So this Conn-young Art Museum is Korea's first modern private museum, founded in 1938, and it was founded by a man who goes by the pen name Conn-young, and he wanted to preserve Korea's culture during that time, which Korea was really undergoing Japanese invasion, Japanese colonization. And so he wanted to take these and preserve them for the future. And so he did exactly that. And the works that he has preserved, some of them have gone on to become some of the most prized national treasures here. So we have a big thank you to him.
Definitely. We have contributors like him who will contribute to the preservation of Korean culture. Now, but you have another museum for us today.
Yes, so I have a couple more museums founded by people who are very passionate about a couple of things. Let's take a look.
What's the perfect place for a collection gathered over a lifetime? A museum. At this museum, you'll find owls, owls, and more owls. They've been passionately collected for over 30 years, and now this museum has been created to share them with the public. Visitors to the museum, located in the heart of Seoul, can see over 2,000 pieces, ranging from antiques to handmade works of art. These owls have been attracting people from all over the country, people looking to get their fill of this big-eyed bird.
In reality, it's really difficult to create a collection of this size, and the fact that she has never left the country, yet has still managed to collect so many works from so many countries, it's really amazing.
Over in Paju, there's a collection of another kind. This museum is dedicated to a familiar wooden puppet from a popular childhood story. Italian author Carlo Collodi's Adventures of Pinocchio became a worldwide favorite, and his story has been kept alive for over 100 years. It continues to be shared with museums like this. Over 200 original pop-up books, dolls, and puppets have been put on display, along with many other puppet figures, much to the enjoyment of its visitors, both adults and children alike.
Kids come here and see the Pinocchio dolls, but they can also learn lessons from the story of Pinocchio. It's a fun way for them to spend time and learn.
Pinocchio's story is one that has been told for years and is sure to be shared for years to come. A collection can start with just a few things and eventually turn into a haven, as these museums have become.
You know, it's funny because my mom actually collects bells. So she buys a bell in every city or place that she goes to. So I think we have roughly, 600 or 700 bells, but I don't think that's quite enough for a museum like this.
Yes, exactly. 2,000 is a little bit more than that.
Well, how did this owl museum come into its being?
So this is a really interesting story. This museum is located in the heart of Seoul amongst many other museums, but if you go there, you'll notice it looks a little bit different, and that's because it started off as a private residence and they turned it into a museum, but they wanted to maintain that homey look. And so the owl mother, as they call her, the lady who went around and collected all these items, she went and collected those 2,000 items, owl items, to put on display there. And you can see that she's very passionate about those. And if you go there, you'll notice that there's not one single real owl stuffed owl there, and so you can see she really loves the owl character, the owl shape, but it's for the love of the animal.
Well, all of our owl and Pinocchio fans will be more than excited to go and check out these places. All right, Yoon-hee, thank you for your report today, and we will see you on Monday.
See you then.
Now, good afternoon. It's quite windy out right now, and the wind is going to get stronger later in the afternoon. That will bring some spring showers over the nation, but the rain should mostly end tonight. Now, the nation is going to reach a high of up to 13 degrees, which you may feel colder because of the wind. Now, for more details, let's shift over to our satellite map. There's about 20 centimeters of snow expected in the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province today, and you may even see thunder and lightning in some regions while it's raining. Now, going over to our readings, Seoul will top out at 12 degrees in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will reach up to 11 and 13 degrees respectively. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island hits over 11 degrees, Dokdo peaks at 6, while Mangeumgang tops out at 1. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Conn-young.
All right, Michelle, thank you for that. And that's all from me at this hour. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with Business Today at 4 p.m. Korea time. See you then.